A soft chime rang, and a young flight attendant appeared beside row 18. She smiled politely, unaware of the tension bubbling under the surface. "Yes, Mom. How can I help you?" the flight attendant asked. The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice, but not enough. Jaden could still hear her. "I don't feel safe sitting next to him," she said, nodding slightly toward the boy. "Can I be moved?" The words dropped like stones in a still pond. The flight attendant blinked. "I'm sorry. I paid for a peaceful flight," the woman continued, "and I'd rather sit somewhere else." Jaden didn't say anything. He stared out the window, pretending he hadn't heard. But inside, his stomach sank. He gripped his pencil harder. The attendant's smile faded. She looked at Jaden. Really looked. A small, quiet boy. Neat, silent, drawing in a notebook. "Ma'am," the attendant said carefully, "this young man is a paid passenger. He has every right to be here. I'm afraid the flight is full. There are no empty seats available." The woman gave a tight, fake laugh. "So you're saying I have to sit here?" The attendant nodded. "Yes, Mom." The woman let out a sigh, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Unbelievable. She crossed her arms and turned away. The flight attendant gave Jaden a kind smile before walking off. But the damage was done. People nearby had heard everything. Whispers began, soft and uncertain at first. "Did she really say that? Poor kid. What's wrong with her?" An older man across the aisle narrowed his eyes. He looked at Jaden, then at the woman. He shook his head, slowly. Jaden kept his head down, pretending to draw, but his hands trembled. The woman pulled out her phone and typed something angrily, her fingers stabbing the screen. She wasn't whispering anymore. "It's ridiculous," she said out loud. "Can't even choose who to sit next to on a flight these days." A teenage girl 2 rows ahead turned around. She caught Jaden's eye and gave him a small wave. He didn't wave back, but his lips twitched, almost a smile. Then something strange happened. The older man across the aisle leaned over to speak. "You know," he said to the woman, "I flew this same airline back in 1963. She ignored him. He didn't stop. Back then, people like him weren't even allowed to sit beside people like you. Not by law. But we changed that. Some of us bled for it. Some died." The woman froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward him. "I'm just saying," the man added, "it's a shame to see how far we've come, just for some to want to go back." Silence followed. Jaden glanced up, just for a second, meeting the man's eyes. The man nodded once, firm and kind. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, continuing the boarding process. One of them, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, paused beside Jaden. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked quietly. Jaden nodded. His voice barely came out. "Yes, Mom." She knelt beside him for a moment, eye level. "You know," she whispered, "you remind me of someone. A long time ago. Someone brave." Jaden looked confused but said nothing. The woman stood, gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze, and walked away. By the time the plane took off, the story had already started to spread. A young man in row 21 had recorded part of the conversation on his phone. He shared it on social media with the caption, "Lady on my flight refuses to sit next to a black kid." Crew handled it like legends. Within minutes, it began gaining likes and comments. Back on the plane, the tension hadn't left, but something else was growing. Awareness. Passengers were checking their phones. A few stared at the woman in white. She noticed. Her jaw tightened. Jaden leaned back in his seat, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. But his mind was racing. He missed his mom. He remembered her words at the airport. "People might treat you unfairly sometimes, Jay, but you don't let them shrink you. You're not small. You're strong." He didn't feel strong right now. He felt invisible. And yet, somehow, like the entire world was staring at him. The plane flew over clouds, smooth and silent. Inside, the whispers continued. An off-duty pilot, sitting in first class, received a quiet message from the head attendant. "He's on this flight," the pilot asked, surprised. The attendant nodded. "Does he know?" "No," she replied. "His family wanted it kept quiet." The pilot looked thoughtful. Then he stood up and made his way to the back of the plane. He stopped at row 18. He looked at Jaden for a long moment. Jaden blinked. "Sir." The man gave a soft smile. "Don't mind me, son. Just checking in." He turned to the rude woman. "And you, ma'am. Everything okay?" She frowned. "Are you with the crew?" "I'm with the airline," he said vaguely. "We're watching today's flight very closely." She gave him a confused look. He gave Jaden a little nod, then returned to first class. As the flight continued, more and more people began to check their phones. The post about Jaden was spreading fast. Comments poured in. "This breaks my heart. That kid looks so sweet. Shame on that woman. Good on the crew for standing up for him." Someone even found an old article about a civil rights hero with the same last name as Jaden. David Montgomery, a man who once led a famous protest in the 1970s. A man who disappeared from the public eye, but was never forgotten. The passengers didn't know yet, but a connection was forming between a young boy drawing in a notebook and a legacy bigger than he ever imagined. And far below, in a city waiting for his arrival, his mother got a phone call she never expected. The sky outside the plane was painted in streaks of gold and soft gray. Passengers were settling in, but something hung in the air, like a string pulled too tight. Jaden sat quietly in his seat, still drawing. The lines on the paper were sharper now, faster. He wasn't drawing spaceships anymore. He was sketching a woman's face, her frown twisted and eyes cold. Then, beside her, a soft outline of an older man with kind eyes. Across the aisle, the man who had spoken earlier, Mr. Rowland, watched him, silent. The whispers in the cabin hadn't stopped. More passengers were now aware of what had happened. And the post on social media. It had crossed 50,000 views already. But none of them knew the whole story. Not yet. In the crew's private area. At the back of the plane, in the small space where the crew stored snacks and supplies, two attendants stood close together, whispering. "That's definitely him," one of them said. A young woman with nervous hands. "Did you see the notebook?" The older attendant with silver hair nodded. "Yes, he draws like David did. Same eyes, same hands. It's eerie. Do you think he knows?" "No, his mother wanted him raised quietly, away from the spotlight." "What about the captain?" The older woman hesitated. "I already told him. He remembers David. Everyone at HQ does. They still talk about how he saved that bus of kids back in the 70s. The younger woman's voice dropped to a hush. "But that wasn't supposed to be public knowledge, right?" "No," the older one said. "Serious now. And that's why we need to keep this flight calm. No more scenes. No more whispers. That boy. He doesn't know who his grandfather really was." Jaden's memories. Jaden didn't know much about his grandfather. All he remembered were old photos, a man with a firm gaze and hands scared by time. His mom said he was strong but silent. Jaden never understood why his grandfather never spoke in the videos, only smiled. He was quiet because he'd already said enough to the world. His mom once told him, "Your grandpa made history, but not for fame, for justice." Jaden had heard those words, but they didn't mean much to a 10-year-old. Until now. Now something was shifting. An unexpected voice. Halfway through the flight, a soft chime rang again. But this time, it wasn't a complaint. It was an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." Jaden's eyes lifted. So did everyone else's. "We want to thank you for flying with us today. We'd also like to say that this flight carries a very special young passenger, someone connected to a powerful piece of our nation's history. The passengers leaned in. The woman in white sat stiff as a statue. The captain continued, his voice steady and proud. In seat 18A is a young boy whose grandfather stood against hatred during a time when doing so was dangerous. He helped change laws. He protected lives. And his legacy lives on in his grandson, Jaden Montgomery. Silence. Then, clapping. It started softly, just a few people. Then more. Row by row, people applauded, not loud and wild, but respectful, powerful. Jaden's eyes went wide. The woman in white looked like she wanted to disappear. The flight attendant with silver hair returned and bent beside him. "Sorry we didn't ask you first, sweetheart." But the captain felt it was time. "You deserve to know." Jaden's mouth opened, but no words came out. "He wasn't just a hero, Jaden. Your grandfather. He saved lives. He spoke out when the world wanted him quiet. And now people need to see that spirit still exists." Back on the ground. The flight had a little over an hour left, but far below, in the airport terminal, something was changing too. A group of reporters had already gathered. Word had spread. A Montgomery was flying in. Not a famous politician, not a celebrity, a child, but one connected to a legacy people hadn't forgotten. And somewhere among them stood a woman with tears in her eyes, Jaden's mom. She'd seen the post online. She saw the captain's words quoted. She saw the comments, the likes, the shares, and she realized her son's quiet heart had just awakened something loud in the world. Back in the air, Jaden was still trying to understand everything. He looked down at the notebook in his lap. His pencil moved slowly now. He drew a man. Tall, with eyes like his, a beard, and behind him, people marching, holding hands, not shouting, but standing. He didn't know how he knew, but somehow he drew it right. Mr. Rowland leaned in from across the aisle. "Your grandfather once stood in front of an angry crowd and didn't flinch," he said softly. "I was there." He looked them in the eye and said, "We are not afraid. We are not done." Jaden blinked. "He'd be proud of you today," Mr. Rowland added. For the first time, Jaden smiled. Not a small twitch, but a real full smile. Arhem was just like any other 13-year-old boy, except his life was far from ordinary. He didn't have expensive clothes, the latest gadgets, or even a home of his own. He lived with his grandmother in a small old house on the edge of the city. His grandma, though frail and often sick, was the only family he had left. She had raised him with love and care, teaching him the values of honesty, hard work, and kindness. They didn't have much, but Arhem always made sure his grandma had everything she needed before himself. One chilly morning, as Arhem walked through the crowded streets of the city, he saw something that would change his life forever. It was a wallet, lying on the ground near a bus stop. The shiny black leather gleamed in the sunlight, and a small golden key poked out from one of the pockets. Arhem hesitated for a moment. He had never seen such an expensive-looking wallet in his life. He crouched down, picked it up, and checked to see if anyone was nearby. No one seemed to notice. He opened it slowly, curious about the contents. There was a thick stack of cash, all neatly folded in the inner compartment. Several credit cards, a few business cards, and a driver's license with the name Mr. Taimur Khan printed on it. The wallet seemed to belong to someone important, maybe even a millionaire. But what caught his attention most was the golden key tucked inside a hidden pocket. Arhem couldn't understand its significance, but he felt a strange pull towards it. As he stood there, holding the wallet, he remembered his grandmother's voice echoing in his head. "You may not have much, but always remember, honesty is the greatest wealth." He looked around again, trying to find the owner, but the street was busy and filled with strangers. No one seemed to notice him, and Arhem felt the temptation. He could easily take the money, No one would ever know. But deep down, he knew that wasn't the right thing to do. The wallet didn't belong to him, and he had to return it, no matter how much it could change his life. He quickly decided to look for the owner, walking from shop to shop, asking everyone if they had lost a wallet. People looked at him with mild curiosity, but no one had lost anything. Arham felt his hope fading, and as the sun began to set, he found himself standing at a bus stop, holding the wallet in his hands. That's when it happened. A sleek black car pulled up beside him, and the driver, a man in a suit, stepped out. He was tall, with sharp features and an air of authority that made Arham feel small. The man looked at him for a moment, his eyes narrowing as if studying him. Then he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Is that my wallet?" the man asked in a cold, almost uninterested tone. Arham nodded, his heart racing. "Yes, sir. I found it on the street. I was looking for you." The man glanced at the wallet in Arham's hands and then back at the boy. For a moment, there was silence. Arham felt uncomfortable under the man's gaze, but he didn't let go of the wallet. "Thank you," the man said finally, taking the wallet from Arham. His fingers brushed against the boy's, but there was no warmth in his touch. "Most people would have kept it, but you didn't." Arham shrugged. "It's not mine. I was just trying to find you." The man raised an eyebrow, looking at him with a hint of curiosity. "A boy like you, living on the streets, and you didn't take the money?" He looked at Arham, as if trying to figure him out. "You could have. It wouldn't have been hard." "I wasn't raised like that," Arham said quietly, remembering his grandmother's lessons. "It wouldn't feel right." The man seemed taken aback by Arham's words, his face hardening for a moment. But then his expression softened, and he gave a small nod. "I'm Mr. Taimur Khan," the man said. "I own a few businesses around here." Arham nodded respectfully, though he had no idea who Taimur Khan was or what his businesses were. He had never heard the name before. The millionaire gave him a thoughtful look, as if weighing something in his mind. "You're an honest boy," Taimur said slowly. "But honesty doesn't always pay off in this world. You've learned that yet?" Arham shook his head. "Not yet." Taimur smiled, but this time it was almost a challenge. "Maybe I can teach you something. What would you do if I offered you something in return for your honesty? Something that could change your life?" Arham looked at him, confused. "I don't want anything from you, sir." Taimur's eyes gleamed for a second. "You'd be surprised. Sometimes doing the right thing can bring unexpected rewards." With that, Taimur turned and got back into his car. As the vehicle sped away, Arham stood frozen, wondering what just happened. The words "unexpected rewards" echoed in his mind. As Arham walked back home, the golden key in the wallet weighed heavily in his pocket. There was something more to this than just returning a lost wallet. But what was it? And what would Mr. Taimur do next? Little did Arham know, his simple act of honesty had set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. The next morning, Arham woke up early, his mind still racing from the strange encounter with Mr. Taimur. The words "unexpected rewards" kept replaying in his mind like an unfinished puzzle. What could the millionaire mean by that? Why had he given Arham such an odd offer, and why was he interested in a poor boy like him? Arham pushed the thoughts aside as he helped his grandmother with the chores. Her old bones creaked as she shuffled around, but she smiled at Arham's every move. He was her world, and she often reminded him, "No matter how little we have, Arham, we've got each other. That's the greatest gift." She didn't have much left in her, but the love and wisdom she offered were more valuable than anything money could buy. By noon, Arham had forgotten about Mr. Taimur. He focused on what was important, earning some money to buy food for him and his grandmother. But just as he was heading to the local shop to help the owner with some deliveries, a sleek black car pulled up in front of their tiny house. The car's tinted windows hid the person inside, but Arham had a sinking feeling. He had only one thought. It's him, Mr. Tamor. The door of the car opened slowly, and out stepped the same well-dressed man Arham had met yesterday. Mr. Tamor's expression was serious, almost unreadable. He glanced at Arham, then at the house. "Good afternoon, Arham," he said with a curt nod. "I know this is a bit unusual, but I'd like to speak with you." Arham was taken aback. He had no idea why Mr. Tamor would come to his house. "Of course, sir," he said, stepping back to allow him inside. Mr. Tamor entered without a word, his eyes scanning the small, humble home. There were no fancy decorations or modern furniture, just a few chairs, a table, and a couple of old bookshelves stacked with well-worn books. Arham's grandmother looked up from her knitting, a faint smile on her face. "Is this your grandmother?" Mr. Tamor asked, his tone softer now. He glanced at Arham, then at the woman who had raised him. "Yes, sir," Arham replied proudly. "This is Grandma Fatima." Mr. Tamor gave a small nod, acknowledging her with a polite, "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Likewise," Grandma Fatima replied, her voice warm yet cautious. She hadn't known who Mr. Tamor was, but she could sense the seriousness in his presence. Without another word, Tamor motioned for Arham to follow him outside. "I've got a test for you, Arham," he said as the two walked towards the car. Arham's heart skipped a beat. "A test? What kind of test?" "Yesterday, you made a decision that most people wouldn't have," Tamor continued as he handed Arham an envelope. "You returned something valuable, something that many would have kept without a second thought. Now I want to see if your honesty is truly your strength." Arham took the envelope, unsure of what was inside. "I don't understand, sir. What do you want me to do?" "Open it," Tamor said simply. "You'll find everything you need inside." Nervously, Arham tore open the envelope and pulled out a map. The map was detailed, showing a series of streets and landmarks in the city, but there was one specific location circled in red. It was an old warehouse near the docks. A note inside the envelope read, "Meet me at the location. Bring what you find. If you pass, I'll offer you a reward." Arham looked up, his confusion deepening. "A reward for what, sir?" "Just follow the map. You'll understand when you get there," Tamor replied with a cold smile. "This is your chance to prove something. If you pass, you'll be rewarded. Fail, and I'll know you were never truly honest." Arham stood frozen for a moment, staring at the envelope and the map in his hand. What kind of test was this? Why the warehouse? What would he even find there? Before he could voice another question, Tamor stepped into the car, rolling down the window. "Remember, Arham, this is not just about honesty. It's about who you truly are." With that, the car sped off, leaving Arham standing alone in the street, the weight of the envelope pressing against his chest. What had he just agreed to? He had no idea what was coming, but one thing was certain: Mr. Tamor was not a man to be trusted blindly. Arham stood there for a while, his mind racing. He knew he had no choice but to go to the warehouse. But what if it was a trick? What if it was some sort of test to see if he would steal something or betray his morals? Yet deep down, he knew that walking away would mean giving up something far greater than money. It would mean giving up the chance to change his life, and his grandmother's, forever. So with a deep breath, Arham decided to go. He tucked the map carefully into his jacket pocket and set off down the street, his heart pounding with anticipation. The journey to the warehouse wasn't long, but every step felt heavier than the last. Arham passed through familiar streets, the city's noise and chaos fading into the background as he focused on the task ahead. When he finally reached the area near the docks, the once busy streets now seemed eerily quiet. The air smelled of salt water and rust, and the sky above was overcast, casting a dull gray light over the surroundings. The warehouse was exactly where the map had indicated, a large abandoned building with broken windows and peeling paint. Arham stood in front of it for a long moment, hesitating, Something about the place felt off. But then he remembered Taimur's words. If you pass, I'll offer you a reward. Taking a deep breath, Arham pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. Exactly, Taimur said, his smile growing. That's what makes you perfect for this. You have nothing to gain but everything to lose. That's where the real test lies. So now you have a choice. The key you hold opens the door to a future where you can have everything you've ever dreamed of. Money, power, influence, everything. Or you can walk away and live the simple life you know. But if you choose to walk away, remember this. You'll never have this chance again. Arham's head was spinning. He didn't know what to think, let alone what to do. Everything he had ever known told him that a chance like this was too good to pass up. But another part of him, the part that had returned the wallet in the first place, wondered if the price was too high. What was the real cost of this opportunity? What was Mr. Taimur really offering him? And why him? I don't know what to do, Arham murmured, his voice barely a whisper. You'll know when the time comes, Taimur said with a cold smile. But for now, think carefully. This is just the beginning. Taimur turned and walked out of the room, leaving Arham standing there alone with the box, the key, and the weight of a decision that could change everything. The silence in the warehouse was deafening as Arham stood frozen, holding the key in his hand. The question remained, echoing in his mind. Would he walk away, or would he take the opportunity? Either way, there was no turning back now. The quiet hum of the warehouse settled around Arham, the weight of Taimur's words still heavy in the air. He stood there for what seemed like an eternity, staring at the small golden key in his hand. The key was no longer just a simple object. It had become a symbol of everything that lay ahead. Taimur's words echoed in his ears. Money, power, influence, everything. Or walk away. Arham clenched his fist around the key, feeling the cool metal against his palm. It had been a long time since he'd had anything of value. He had grown up in a small, rundown house with his grandmother, scraping by on the little they had. They lived in a neighborhood where people struggled just to make ends meet. Every day was a fight for survival, and opportunities like the one Taimur was offering were few and far between. Could he really walk away from something like this? Could he walk away from the chance to change his life forever? A part of him wanted to say yes, the part of him that remembered his grandmother's words, the one she had said so many times. Hard work and honesty are all you need. She had always told him that money and power weren't the most important things in life. It was love, kindness, and integrity that mattered. But another part of him, the part that had always felt like he was invisible in this world, was tempted. The chance to live a life beyond his wildest dreams. The chance to not worry about where his next meal would come from or if he could pay the bills. The chance to give his grandmother everything she had ever wanted. Arham ran his fingers through his hair, his thoughts racing. His grandmother had sacrificed so much for him. He didn't want to let her down, but was there a way to make both choices work? Could he still keep his integrity and take this opportunity, or would it change him forever? He glanced around the warehouse again, the cold concrete walls looming around him. There was no turning back from this moment. Whatever choice he made would shape his future, and the thought of that sent a shiver down his spine. He reached for the box again, his hands trembling. The note that Taimur had given him seemed so simple, yet the weight of it felt unbearable now. Will you take it, or will you walk away? As he stared at the key in his hand, a new realization began to form in his mind. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about trust. Taimur had placed his faith in him, and now Arham had to decide if he could trust Taimur back. Was this really an opportunity, or was it a trap? Arham knew he couldn't answer that question right away. He needed more time. He needed to think, to process everything. But just as he was about to put the key back in his pocket and leave, he heard a sound behind him. The door to the warehouse creaked open, and Arham turned around to see a familiar face. It was Mr. Tamor again, his eyes watching him with an almost predatory intensity. "You're still here," Tamor said, his tone unreadable. "Have you made your decision?" Arham swallowed hard, his throat dry. I don't know." Tamor smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile that sent a chill down Arham's spine. You know, most people would have taken the opportunity without a second thought. They'd want the money, the power. But not you. You're different. Arham. Arham frowned. "What do you mean?" Tamor stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I've been watching you. Your honesty. Your integrity. It's rare, you know. Most people would sell their soul for a chance like this. But you're hesitating, and that hesitation is why I chose you." Arham's heart skipped a beat. "You chose me?" Tamor nodded. "I've been watching you for a long time. You may think that I'm offering you a chance to change your life, but the truth is, you've already changed your life by being who you are. The choice is yours now. You can take the key and unlock a future you've only dreamed of, or you can walk away and continue living your life as you always have. But remember, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Once you walk away, it's gone forever." Arham took a step back, his head spinning. He had always dreamed of a better life, but this wasn't just a dream. It was a test of everything he believed in. Could he really trust Tamor? Could he really trust the opportunity he was being offered? Tamor, seeing Arham's hesitation, gave a small shrug. "Take your time. But remember, sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the greatest rewards." With that, Tamor turned and walked away, leaving Arham standing alone in the dimly lit warehouse. The silence that followed was deafening. Arham's thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions: fear, excitement, doubt. His fingers clutched the golden key, feeling the weight of it in his palm. The key to a new life, or the key to his ruin. He knew this decision wasn't just about money. It was about what kind of person he wanted to be. Could he remain true to his values, or would he become like everyone else, chasing after a dream without considering the cost? Arham took a deep breath, his mind made up. He had to make the choice. He had to decide what kind of future he wanted. The door to his new life was right in front of him, and the key to that door was in his hand. But would he unlock it, or would he leave it behind? The answer, Arham knew, would define the rest of his life. Arham's decision weighed heavily on him as he sat in the small, dimly lit room of the warehouse, the golden key resting in his palm. His mind kept replaying Tamor's words, each sentence sinking deeper into his thoughts. "Once you walk away, it's gone forever." It was a simple statement, but the finality of it was almost suffocating. He had always been taught that making decisions based on principles was the right way to live, but now, in front of him was an opportunity to change everything about his life. Everything he had ever dreamed of was within his reach. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. "Always choose what's right, Arham, not what's easy." But was this opportunity wrong? Tamor had said the choice was his. But what did that really mean? Was he being offered a chance to build his future, or was this a trap to destroy him? The sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse, breaking his concentration. Arham looked up, his heart racing as he saw Tamor return. The billionaire's eyes were cold and calculating, but there was a flicker of something else there, something almost hopeful. "You've been thinking about it for a long time," Tamor said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I can see the doubt in your eyes. I get it. You're wondering if it's worth it." Arham didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at the golden key in his hand again, twisting it slightly between his fingers. His grip tightened, but his chest felt like it was caving in. He was so close to having everything he had ever wanted. His grandmother, the woman who raised him, who had sacrificed so much, deserved a life of comfort. But was this the right way to do it? "Don't worry," Tamor continued, stepping closer. "The key you hold can unlock more than just riches, Arham. It can unlock power, control, influence, the kind of things most people can only dream about. Arham swallowed hard. His stomach churned. It wasn't just the money Tamor was offering him. It was power. Power to change everything. He could have it all. Respect, authority, the life he had always imagined. But was it worth it? Was it worth losing who he was in exchange for all that? As if reading his mind, Tamor smiled, a hint of satisfaction in his gaze. I know what you're thinking. You're afraid of what might happen to you if you take the key. You're afraid you'll lose yourself in the process. But you won't. Not if you don't let it change you. I'm not asking you to become like me, Arham. I'm just offering you a chance to be something more than what you've been. Arham shook his head. More than what I've been. I don't want to be someone like you. I don't want to change who I am just for the sake of money and power. I've seen what that kind of life does to people. Tamor's smile faded, but his gaze remained steady. I get it. But this isn't just about money. This is about control. Control over your own destiny. What's the point of living a life where you have no say in your future, where you're constantly struggling just to survive? What's the point of doing what you've been doing when you have the power to do so much more? Arham's hand tightened around the key once more, the sharp edges pressing into his skin. It hurt, but the pain felt real. It felt grounding. He didn't want to give in to temptation, but the idea of having power, of making his own choices, and never having to worry again. It was so easy to be drawn to it. Why me? Arham asked, his voice a whisper now, his eyes still on the key. Why did you pick me? There must be a reason why you chose me over all the other people who would kill for a chance like this. Tamor's eyes softened slightly. I've been watching you, Arham. Watching you for a long time. You're different. You don't want this for the money, or the fame, or the power. You want it because you want to make a difference. You want to take care of the people you love. You're not like the others. Arham felt a pang in his chest at those words. His grandmother had always told him that he was special, that he could be more than just another person struggling to survive. Maybe Tamor was right. Maybe this opportunity was a chance for him to truly make a difference, not just for himself, but for her as well. But deep down, Arham still wasn't sure. He wasn't sure he could handle this kind of power. He wasn't sure that he could protect himself from losing everything he valued if he took this step. Tamor, sensing the hesitation, stepped closer and placed a hand on Arham's shoulder. You don't have to decide right now. But know this key isn't just an opportunity. It's a responsibility. What you do with it will determine not just your future, but the future of everyone around you. Arham's heart raced as the weight of Tamor's words settled in. He could walk away. He could leave the key on the table and return to his simple life, where he would have to work hard, but at least he wouldn't have to compromise who he was. Or he could take the key. He could change everything. His mind swirled with possibilities, and for a moment, it felt like the world was spinning around him. It wasn't just about money, not anymore. It wasn't just about power either. This was about something bigger, about deciding who he wanted to be. With a deep breath, Arham finally looked up at Tamor. His hand, which had been shaking slightly, steadied. He was ready. It was time. I'll take the key, he said, his voice strong. Tamor's smile returned, but it was different this time. There was a sense of approval in it. Good. You won't regret it. Arham stepped forward and placed the key into Tamor's outstretched hand, his decision made. But as Tamor held the key, something in the air shifted. A change had begun, and Arham couldn't shake the feeling that everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. The moment the golden key slipped from Arham's hand into Tamor's, a heavy silence filled the air between them. Arham stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest, as he watched Tamor hold the key. It wasn't just a simple object. It felt like a symbol of everything that had been promised to him. Power, influence, and the ability to control his own destiny. But even as the weight of the moment settled in, A question lingered at the back of Arham's mind. Had he made the right choice? Tamur, sensing Arham's internal struggle, nodded slowly, as if he knew exactly what the young man was thinking. This is just the beginning, Arham. You've crossed a line that you can't uncross. But with that decision comes a world of opportunities. His voice was steady, almost reassuring, but Arham couldn't shake the unease that was creeping into his chest. Arham had always thought that life was about doing the right thing, about working hard and staying true to his values. But now, with the weight of the key in Tamur's hand, everything seemed to have changed. He had been offered power, yes, but he had also been offered a chance to change everything he had ever known. The key is more than just access to wealth and influence, Tamur continued, his eyes never leaving the golden object between his fingers. It opens doors to a network of powerful people, the kind of people who shape the world. You could be one of them, Arham. You could be someone who doesn't have to ask for permission. You'll have a say in everything that happens from here on out. Arham's mind raced. A say in everything. He had grown up in a world where his decisions had been limited, where the choices he made had always been tied to survival. The thought of actually having control over his life, over his future, was intoxicating. But then, his grandmother's voice returned to him, faint but clear. Don't let the power change you, Arham. It's not the power that defines you, but how you choose to use it. He couldn't ignore her words. She had always been his moral compass, the one who reminded him that power wasn't the key to happiness. It was the ability to live with integrity and purpose. But how could he ignore the opportunity in front of him? How could he let it slip away when everything he had ever wanted was within his grasp? Tamur was watching him closely, as if waiting for Arham to make the next move. You're thinking too much. I get it. But understand this. Taking the key doesn't mean you lose yourself. It means you take control of your destiny. You don't have to be afraid of the change. You're strong enough to handle it. Arham felt the weight of Tamur's words pressing down on him. It wasn't just about what he had now. It was about the future. The future he could create. The life he could give his grandmother. The thought of giving her a life free from worry, free from hardship, tugged at his heart. But then, there was the fear that came with such power. What would it cost him to achieve that? What would he lose in the process? He looked at Tamur, meeting his gaze. You say I can have everything, but at what cost? What kind of person will I become if I take this power? Will I be able to stay true to who I am? Tamur's expression softened, and for a moment, he seemed more human, less like the cold businessman Arham had first encountered. Arham, no one ever becomes powerful without sacrifices. But that doesn't mean you have to become someone else. You can use this power for good, for change. The world needs people like you, people who have the courage to do what's right. Arham stared at him, trying to read between the lines of his words. Was Tamur truly offering him a chance to make a difference, or was this all just a game to him? A way to manipulate Arham into doing his bidding. But as he watched Tamur's calm demeanor, Arham realized that this was about more than just the billionaire. This was about his own choices. He was the one who had to decide what kind of person he would be. He could walk away, live a simple life, and never risk losing himself. Or he could take the key, step into the unknown, and become the man he had always dreamed of, someone who could change the world. The decision loomed over him like a storm cloud, and for a long moment, Arham felt paralyzed, unsure of what to do. But then, the image of his grandmother appeared in his mind. Her tired face, the way she had always sacrificed so much for him. He couldn't let her down. He couldn't let her live out her days in poverty when he had the chance to make a real difference. With a deep breath, Arham looked back at Tamur. I'm ready. I'll take the power. But I'll do it my way. I won't lose myself in the process. Tamur's eyes gleamed with approval. That's the spirit, Arham. You'll learn to balance the power and the responsibility. And when you do, you'll be unstoppable. As Arham nodded, he could feel the weight of his decision settling in. It wasn't just about wealth or influence anymore. It was about using the power he had been given to protect the people he loved, to make a difference in a world that had never given him a fair chance. He reached out, accepting the golden key from Tamor's hand, and as his fingers closed around it, a sense of finality washed over him. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges he couldn't even begin to imagine. But one thing was clear: the world had just become his to shape.